All right, guys, this is Steve, and welcome to the Invisible Jiu-Jitsu Podcast. Today, this podcast is called Dear Jiu-Jitsu Parents, where we're going to be talking about how to be the best jiu-jitsu parent that we could possibly be. Now, I want to go ahead and say that I'm not a parent, but I have been working with children for almost 20 years now. And I just want to relay some of the patterns, some of my own experiences that I've been reflecting on all of this time and have been able to develop an amazing culture and relationship with the kids, with the parents at the school, so that it really does truly benefit everyone, including the skill development. So I'd like to start off with some of the topics that we're going to be covering today. The first one's going to be finding a jiu-jitsu school and how to know if it's right for your child. Next, we'll go a little bit into how to support your child during their journey. And there's a lot of different dynamics to that, so we'll get to that in a bit. And the next one will be how parents can shape the gym culture of the kids program. So what are some things that we can do as adults to really make it the most positive learning environment that we could provide for children? Next is going to be things like people that are more in-depth, more committed, more like jiu-jitsu has really become part of their lives and they're competing. And what are some tips that we can do or what are some tips that I can give that on competition day we can really show up for our kid? And then the dynamic relationship. Life is constantly moving. You go through these ebbs and flows. If you're training over the years, children will go through certain developments of their life that either draw them to their practice or pull them away from their practice. And how we can navigate those waters so that children can stay consistent, grow their love for the sport, and actually sustain a practice long term. So firstly, let's go into the topic of finding a jiu-jitsu school and how to know it's right for your kid. So you're listening to this podcast, you're doing Google searches, searching on Instagram, trying to find a school for your child. And obviously there's only so many assumptions that we can make by being on the internet, but truly getting into the school, meeting the people that are going to be working with your child personally, maybe going in and watching a class or doing a trial class is obviously these are the first steps. Okay, but sometimes price or sometimes distance or sometimes maybe even the skill level at which your child's going to be learning may actually not be our determining factors. Now, granted, I'm going to just, before I go any further, make a strong foreground here. I am not in this podcast in any way going to try and tell parents how to parent their kid. But there is a line. And that line is when your child steps onto the mat, they're in a classroom setting now. And how from that point forward, you kind of like have to give and trust your child to a stranger in this moment. And maybe how that instructor interacts makes the classroom setting fun. Gives them a good understanding of self-defense and keeps them focused is far more important than something trendy. Right now, jiu-jitsu nowadays is very trendy. And there's plenty of schools out there that don't do justice to teaching their kids program. Maybe like for me, for example, I grew up in a traditional martial arts setting doing like karate. Sometimes those karate schools only work with children and they do a phenomenal job. They build the kids' confidence. Is what they're teaching maybe the most effective thing in terms of self-defense? Probably not. But I think that sometimes if it's about exercise, if it's about interacting with other kids, and it's not necessarily about building the best self-defense techniques in the world, that might be a good fit. If maybe we can cover both of those things, right? So my point is, we bring our child to a trial class. You get good feelings from the instructor. They really present themselves in a way and run their class in a way, have a culture in a way where you can trust your child to be on the mat, maybe even without your supervision at some point in the future. And you see that they walk out of the classroom each time and they're learning something, right? And it's certainly not a bad idea to go ahead and actually try multiple schools and experience multiple cultures and different classroom structures and see what works best for your individual child. You know them best. You know what they need. Maybe they need like extreme exercise in an extremely disciplined room where nothing flies, right? In terms of like talking or fooling around or whatever it may be, and you know they need that discipline, great. Or maybe it's a softer approach and they need to be having fun throughout the class and at the same time learning a little bit of something. Or long story short, you know your child. It's a good idea to explore different schools, okay? It could be one of the most powerful transformative tools for your child, but it can also be a very frustrating experience, all depending on how it's approached. Okay, so this is how I would approach choosing a school if I personally was a parent. Obviously, we don't want to see things like kids running around without no direction, or maybe the coaches, all of their attention is strictly focused on the advanced students because they're going to be competing or something along like that. Or maybe there's absolutely no communication with the parents, right? Like they just kind of like sit in the corner, scroll on their phone, wait for class to start, teach the kids, and then go back to doing what they were doing without talking to you about their child or how they're doing or checking in and things like that, right? So we aren't really just choosing a sport. We are choosing an environment that will shape our child's development, right? So next thing, and this is probably going to be the bulk of the podcast. Here, we're in the classroom. We have our school. We love it. We love the instructor. And now we're starting to see our child go through the trials and errors. Okay. And how we respond to these trials, these errors, these ups and downs, I think can really make or break the practice. And I can give you guys some personal examples that I've come across. But really, if you don't train jiu-jitsu yourself as a parent versus if you do train, the dynamics can actually shift a little bit here. There are boundaries that both circumstances won't cross over, but there are some things that we can mention. Okay, so let's first talk about if you're a parent and you don't train jiu-jitsu. Okay, I think that there needs to be a building of trust for you as a parent. Okay, and if you aren't in the classroom yet and you're a soon-to-be jiu-jitsu parent, a big dynamic or a big thing that happens within schools is that parents stand on the edge of the mat and they yell over the coach and they try and coach over the coach, especially during live sparring. And from my own understanding, this comes often in all sports. I know multiple people who teach or coach multiple different sports, and this seems to be a thing. And the way I chalk it up to it is, one, a parent just wants to see their child do well, right? And it's their job to coach them through life, right? But unfortunately, it's also a classroom setting, right? And it is about skill development. And if you don't train yourself and you don't have that prerequisite knowledge, me personally, I think that's overstepping a boundary, because our ultimate aim and our ultimate goal is to always do what's best for the child in terms of skill development, character development, these sorts of things. So screaming to be more aggressive, or to throw them over, quote unquote, or giving false instructions and raising the intensity and the energy in the room when it's actually not as productive as we would hope it to be. That's something that a lot of jiu-jitsu coaches talk about. And that seems to be something that is actually very common within the jiu-jitsu community. And another aspect of this is that I think that because we are teaching your child how to fight, how to defend themselves, it is a combat sport. There is also this primal instinct to do everything you can to protect your child, right? So if you see your child getting choked or in an armbar, it's obviously not the most pleasurable sight for a parent, especially if they haven't experienced it themselves, especially if they don't have trust that the room is a controlled environment. Or we can even go another route where parents are simply just trying to live through their child. They love jiu-jitsu. They watch jiu-jitsu all the time. But when a coach comes up and says, oh, we see how passionate you are, why don't you jump into the class and try it out? And all of a sudden it's no, my this, my that, I can't do that, and I can't do this, I'm too busy, right? So just give you guys an example, and I speak from my own experience of being someone else's child is, but my first bedroom, for example, was Yankees everywhere. I was 5 years old. I moved into my room. It had Yankee wallpaper. That was wallpaper was popular back in the day, in the 90s. My fan was like a big baseball mitt, and the light bulb was like the baseball, and the fan propellers were like baseball bats. And I'm 5, yet, I don't obviously have a say, and I don't care about baseball. And I grow up and get older and start thinking like, I don't even watch baseball. I don't care about baseball, right? But my dad was obviously hoping that I would, and was putting me under conditions that would obviously satisfy his personal things that he liked and maybe influence me along the way. So that's just a small example, maybe not so serious, but definitely an example of how we tend to project our own desires and wants upon our child. And I say this from being on the tail end of that experience. So we definitely have to do some self-reflection when it comes to being a parent who doesn't train jiu-jitsu. And I think one of the most admirable and productive ways of having a relationship with your child within this setting of learning jiu-jitsu is how encouraging that you can be, how present you can be when it's time to go to class. We all have a million things to do. And if we're running around with anxiety, and you have anxiety about bringing your child to class because it's one extra thing to do, a lot of times that anxiety sort of runs off into the atmosphere of the routine of when it's time to go to class, or just developing an approach that allows us to get our child excited. And with that excitement comes the urge to learn and to be more consistent, right? So I think that is probably the most important role. And if there's something that happens within the classroom setting that actually makes you doubt the trust of the instructors, it's very important that you verbalize those things, that we don't let them build up, that we don't let them cause inner frustration, because obviously those things will start to be projected in some way, shape, or form. Okay, now in terms of being a parent that does train jiu-jitsu, this is, in my opinion, the most exciting thing, because we obviously deal with parents who don't train, parents who do train, and the parents that do train, they are watching class from a completely different perspective. And this is it's like, you you watch your child go through their first breakup, and then you reflect on your own and you're like, yeah, I completely understand what they're going through, right? So when you're watching your child stuck in a bottom pin, and then you reflect on your own experience about being stuck on a bottom pin, how it feels helpless, how maybe it's harder to breathe, or you feel like you're getting smothered, the anxiety that builds up in you with the frustration of not being able to bridge and shrimp or escape in some way, where maybe a parent who doesn't train, they don't know how that feels. And they just scream like, "Why? Just get up, push him," right? Like, throw him over, right? And it's like, you're getting amped up. Your child is already amped up, and they're trying their best. They're trying to figure out their way through the position. But because you may not have that experience, it's very hard to relate. Versus a parent who does, especially for the parents that train, and this is just for me personally, I allow parents, as long as they do it in a calm and subtle way that doesn't distract the class or bring an energy into the room that's disrupting, I let them say one or two things off to the side. But if they're, screaming and like drawing attention to themselves and shifting the energy in the classroom, that's definitely something that I would step in and kind of draw a line there. So overriding the instructions that are being given to class is definitely something that will again leak on to other parents. Like, oh, if they can yell and scream, like I can yell and scream, and then pretty soon you have little conversations that build tension within parents or whatever. Like I personally have never experienced something like this within my gym, but I hear stories all the time. So this is something that we can definitely avoid. I think one of the best things that you can do is just reinforce what the coach is saying, not replace them, not be the coach yourself. But it's time for water break, and you say, hey, Coach Steve said do X, Y, and Z. Make sure you put your hand here and here, right? You remember what he said? All right, go get him. You're doing a great job, right? Like just reinforcing those things because you understand why they're important and what they should be doing. Now, there's obviously, we can do 3-hour-long podcasts just about a parent who does train versus doesn't train, but this is the general idea. Right. And our goal here really is not to coach, but it's to support the process. Right. And your child better than any coach does. And if you can be emotionally supportive, give them the confidence and to redirect their attention away from any negative self-talk or just show that you're there, and regardless of how good they're doing, you support them in the process of learning, right? However way you decide to do that, I think that's a great thing. So I think this really leaks into our next topic, which is parents play a large role in shaping the culture of the gym, which we really kind of pieced on this just a minute or two ago, right? So kids, they're gonna mirror your behavior, right? And I think that this is one of the biggest things that is leaking into the culture of jiu-jitsu, right? And for me, jiu-jitsu is not just a sport; it's actually a sport last. But in the general eyes of the public, and even maybe within the community, is that it's a sport first. It's not a form of discipline. It's not an art. It's not a form of self-defense. It's a sport first. And that can really skew the culture of a martial arts setting. And I think as adults, right? Kids, we all have mirror neurons. We see these behaviors, we start to repeat them. You can just think like you spend a large amount of time with a certain group of people, they start using specific words, and then all of a sudden those words start to become part of your vocabulary, right? So kids mirror the coaches, how they present themselves, how they speak, the kind of respect they show to other people. And the same thing goes for any other adult, whether it's parent, coach, teacher in school, or whatever it may be, the Hollywood movies that they watch or the music that they listen to. And they are so heavily impacted by the world around them. They're trying to navigate their way and start to function in more mature ways, depending on the age, but they're heavily influenced. So if we're screaming, then they're going to look at that and say, well, that's an acceptable behavior, right? If, you give the instruction, oh, little Timmy had me in side control and he was really hurting my face. And next time you give them the instruction for like payback or revenge, like next time you're going to get him, you're going to crush him, right? Like that's your teammate, right? That's not your enemy. That's your teammate. So this positive, supportive, respectful, patient, culture really starts with us. And when we start sideline coaching and comparing and putting pressure on the students, especially at a younger age, we start them we have a 4 to 7 year old age group, we have an 8 to 12 year old age group, and the dynamics are very, very different. There's 2 different levels of maturity, 2 different styles of learning, this like logic and analytical thinking really doesn't start to develop of what seems to me until like 8 years old. So how we support our child, depending on which stage they're at, I think is super important, right? So I'll just give you guys like a quick example. I've seen many times in the past where students of mine, especially at teenage years, you're trying to really gain the support of people around you. Social status becomes very important. Titles become very important. Now maybe Instagram followers or all these other sorts of things, social dynamics become extremely important, where young kids just kind of want to have fun. They don't really like think too much about all that stuff. But in the past, we developed some extremely talented and hardworking students, and a lot of pressure gets put on them. They're expected to win. They're expected to perform. They put a lot of pressure on themselves because they don't want to let the adults around them down. And rather than have a supportive, nurturing environment around them, they have people screaming in their ear, sort of like a gladiator standing in the middle of a coliseum, and there's bread being thrown at them. There's cursing, there's negative energy, because it's a fight, right? And it's easy for our animal instincts to kind of let themselves be known loud and clear. And again, I understand that we want to see our child dominate. We don't want to see them get hurt, right? So that protection instinct really comes into play. But I don't want to get sidetracked with that because we're actually going to go into competition topics a little bit later. But in terms of parents shaping the culture of the gym, we can really like do an amazing job. And I think like parents getting to know each other, especially if your child is rolling, or making sure like any outside drama in your life doesn't get brought inside the gym. And this, we do this at work, we do this in other environments. And I think that if we can make that hour of our day towards supporting our child in that moment, and not putting pressure on them. And again, sometimes your child needs a little fire under their butt, right? And this is like what a really strong coach will be able to do, is they can read the room. They can know this person needs a little stern push, and this child needs to be handled in maybe a lighter approach. And having these individual conversations with the kids, what they like, what their school day was like, what they like about jiu-jitsu, how they handle themselves under pressure, right? Like there's so many different circumstances that lead to how you might physically address or communicate with your child. And you guys know best. I only get small observations within the classroom setting, and I can build out accordingly. But when we all kind of take that role and we really have that supportive environment, that energy kind of permeates through the gym culture. And when new people come in, they feel this very environment. The trust gets built right away. And when a child can freely express themselves without the anxieties, without the overaggression, without the lack of confidence, or if they did have lack of confidence, be able to verbalize these sorts of things, we can like really move through the process of not only building skill, but also personal development much faster. So I think that praise on the effort, respect to all kids. They're not our enemies. They're our training partners. We're part of a team. This is all like super important stuff, right? And then a little bit further on down the line, you guys have gotten into a groove. Your child really loves jiu-jitsu and they want to start to compete, right? Now, I think I know a lot, especially on Long Island. There are so many kids involved in so many different sports. And I think this is great on one level because they really get to like communicate with a bunch of different kids. They really get to explore different activities and find what they like. This is all like really, I think is great. But when it comes to investing our attention in developing one skill, we all know as adults that the more you can focus on one thing, the better you can get at it. And I'm under the impression, and unfortunately for me, I came from like lower middle class family where my parents were like, listen, we're working all day and we don't have time. Pick one thing and you can do that. And if you don't like it, quit and we'll do another thing. And at 5 years old, I started and I haven't stopped since. And now it's my livelihood. It's still my hobby. It's still what I enjoy doing. My closest friends are there. And I think that I'm lucky in that sense. But whether you're pulling away from jiu-jitsu and investing in another sport, or you're pulling away from other sports and investing in jiu-jitsu, that's obviously everyone's personal decision. But I do think there's something to be said to being fully focused and fully committed to one thing in particular. Now, depending on your child, maybe they're a gifted athlete. They love it all. They do great in all of it. And you can swing it time-wise. Awesome. Just my 2 cents on, multi-sport, or just should I do both? Should I do everything? Focus on one? So for me, it was do one and commit to it fully, but everyone's different. Now, in terms of our child, like going through this process of competition. Okay. Now this is really where our animal instincts come out. Why? One, we don't know these people. Two, we have been conditioned almost our entire life through our culture to view the other side as an enemy. Whether it's a country, whether it's a sports team, whether it's, your neighbor got a nicer car, now you need a nicer car, whatever it is, right? Like we're forced into this culture of competition. Right? It's you against everybody else. And I think that's a really dangerous thing. We've seen what it has done to society in multiple different circumstances. So I think that like, as you go to competition, right, your goal absolutely is to win. Why are you going to compete if you don't want to try your best? And your best is trying hard, performing moves, like doing jujitsu. You're fighting. Like, you need to be ready to show up 100%. But you also need to realize that, especially as a child, their journey is very long. Being too focused on the wins and the losses can be at an extreme detriment, and make the experience not so pleasurable for anybody, for that matter. So you see a lot of kids, they get burnt out because they just get pushed too hard, and competition doesn't become something they enjoy doing. It's something, it feels like almost comes off as something they feel like they have to do. And those are two different things. So going out and having a good time, but absolutely trying your best and not giving up unless you absolutely have to. You get caught in a submission and your safety is at jeopardy. You don't give up. You control your emotions, and I think that this is one of the best things that we can teach the younger generation, and it really is a passion of mine to relay my own experiences as a martial artist to help people regulate their inner world. And that's really where the name of this podcast comes from. And I think if we can, again, lead by example, you show up at the competition, you support them, you maybe make some jokes, you make it so they're having fun. And a lot of times, especially before competition, some kids, they're just running around playing tag, right? Not a worry in the world. And then some kids are like, sitting in the corner and listening to music and like, praying before they go out because they really hope that they're going to win, right? Like, you see all different walks of life and how people handle competition differently. You see some coaches that are absolutely screaming, like their face is beet red. They're about to pop a blood vessel. They're cursing. They're telling their child to rip their effing arm off. And it gives a really, really bad energy to the room. And I highly recommend that if you see those sorts of things, that you don't feed into it. You understand that people carry themselves in the way that they know how, and people's personalities vary very differently. A lot of us project. A lot of us, it's very often that the loudest person in the room tends to be the least confident, and understanding how other people handle these scenarios is part of being a competitor, part of being a martial artist, and understanding how to tune it out and how to focus on your goal. And you're there for skill development. You're there to try your best. You're there for a challenge, and staying positive regardless of what the energy is like in the room. That is an amazing skill that we can teach the younger generation. Not to get impatient, not to get angry, not to scream at each other or start fights in the parking lot because you're there for, some medal that, is like fake gold that the competition bought on wholesale for like 30 cents. And, we make it a lot more than what it really is. And I think that if we can make it an enjoyable experience, then we'll build consistency. If we build consistency, we build skill development. And if jiu-jitsu professionally is a path your child wants to take, if they have that foreground, they're way more likely to be successful and sustainable. So let's go ahead and get into, I think, which might be our last topic. And that is really time. Life goes really quick. Children grow up really fast. I am now in this period of my life where the kids might call uncle or unk status. I've lost my hair. I've grown a gray beard. And my kids from my first children's program when I was in my early 20s are now showing back up as grown adults. And I'm seeing, that time flies so fast. And as children grow, their physical needs change, their social needs change, and we need to be able to be very dynamic in how we approach things. So they may go through phases of excitement, and then resistance, and then they want to go to the movies with their friends. They want to go to the mall and walk around. They want to do all these different things. And the discipline that seems so dear to them all of a sudden starts to fade. And the social dynamics become way more important, right? And if maybe like their friends on the mat aren't like the friends they see every day in school, then they might want to be drawn away from that. Right. And sometimes that could really shock parents, where they'll come to me and they'll be like, I don't understand. Like, it's been 5 years. We're here every week. He loves it so much. And then all of a sudden, like, all he wants to do is, play video games or go over his friend's house. And, like, he doesn't want to come to class anymore. And I think like there's a few different ways that we can approach these ebbs and flows. And I'll give you guys one example. One of our students, he started with us very young, 5 years old. He's almost 13. He started wrestling. He started doing track. He started doing all these other things. And he hasn't been as consistent as he would like to, right? But his parents don't push him. He does love jiu-jitsu, and they don't put pressure on him to return. And because of that, he returns. And because of that, he continues to enjoy jiu-jitsu. And there's a good chance because of that relationship, he may train far into his adulthood, versus maybe it's like, you can swing the pendulum in the other direction, where some parents are like, no, you have to do this. No ifs, ands, or buts. For me, when I was a child and I went through this phase, my dad would just grab me by the hair and drag me out the door, kicking and screaming, crying, like me not wanting to go. And he's like, I don't give a shit. Like, you don't deserve to be lazy. No one should be lazy. And this is what you're gifted at. You need to grow discipline. And to be honest, it was the best thing that he could do for me at that time, because I was lazy. And if I did say, no, Dad, I want to quit, and he was like, oh, okay, whatever, I honestly don't know where I'd be right now, and what sort of values I would have and how my life would have developed. So sometimes like parents are very easily just like, oh, okay, one less thing I have to do. Like, you don't want to go? Sure, fine. And now I save myself time. I save myself money. Let's just quit. You're fine. Right. I think that's if you feel like it's right for you, sure. But I feel like that needs to be a heavily weighed thing. Is my kid just like turning away? Does he love jiu-jitsu, but he's turning away because it's a challenge? Do I want to teach my child to just quit when something becomes difficult? Are their interests going somewhere else and it's very genuine and they really want to try these things? And you don't want them to be a multi-sport athlete, so you're going to take some time away. Is it, I don't want to go train today because I want to go to the mall. It's like, okay, you went to the mall last week. You quit. You didn't go to class last week for the mall. You're not doing that again. We need to stay consistent. This is how skill development works, or however you handle it, right? So I think that showing up when you don't feel like it, but you show up anyway because you know it's the right thing, that's discipline. The social dynamics, maybe if your child's getting the social dynamics that they need, they're building friendship, communication with other kids within their classroom at jiu-jitsu, that's a very big factor. But sometimes, you're spending less time talking with each other than you are actually learning and sparring. So sometimes that need for a social dynamic of just like playing with their friends is well needed, especially if you're very busy and during the week they don't get a chance to play and be kids. They're just at school, and trying to manage their time at such a young age. Sometimes it's nice to let your hair down and just go have a good time. So I think that as the different phases of kids' lives come about, how we approach our training should be heavily considered. And then obviously when they're adults and old enough to make their decisions and they decide like, yeah, this is what I'm going to do. Awesome. If they don't, right, at least they really have an amazing skill set to defend themselves. God forbid they ever need. Right. So I think there's a lot of things here, guys. And I think that if there's one thing that I can say from the perspective, like if I was a parent and I'm also a coach, been doing jiu-jitsu for a long time, been coaching kids for a long time. And if I was a parent, the last thing I would do is shove jiu-jitsu down their throat. I would just lead by example. For a coach, that's easy for me to do. It's my job. It's my hobby. It's what I personally love. But I think that when you love something and your child sees the joy that it brings you, if that's something that they want to experience that joy from, that's the medium that they want to get that joy from, just show them how it happens for you. And if you don't train and your child truly loves jiu-jitsu, there's going to be ups and downs. It's often that we don't want to do things that are tough, and jiu-jitsu is not, it's not a walk in the park. It's a process. It's a lifelong process that really does take time in order to build the craft. It's not something you learn within a few months. It's not something you get good at within maybe even a few years. And I think being that support character, the ultimate support character, cheering your kid on, not allowing any negative self-talk, congratulating them on their wins and losses for trying their absolute best. I think these are you can't go wrong with that sort of thing. So I think in terms of topics, that's all we have for today. If you guys are a parent at the school, at my school, 10th Planet Long Island, and you're listening to this and something came up and you want to, riff back and forth about certain topics, you can always shoot the school line a text or an email. If you are a parent that maybe trains at another school and you need some advice, again, as a coach, as an adult member of this society, I think it's our obligation as adults to really give all children, no matter what country, what background they're from, what school they train at, proper tools. So if you guys want to reach out, you can always go to our website, 10plongisland.com. That's 10plongisland.com. And you can just write us an email and say, hey, I heard Coach Steve's podcast. You don't even have to mention where you train. You can just say, my child's X, Y, and Z years old. They've been training for this long. This is something that I keep running into. What do you think about this? We will 100% return your email with the best advice that we could possibly give. You take it with a grain of salt, and everyone wins, because ultimately the new generation of children are going to be our adults. They're going to be the ones that set a professional example within the jiu-jitsu community for the next generation. And it's our job to set them up for success. So I appreciate your guys' time and attention. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you guys next time.